It's an honor to have our friend, General Keith Kellogg, co-chairman of the American First Policy Institute, with us. General, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Mark. Thanks for having me today.
First of all, General, I want to remind people who you are. You've got an arm's length long, patriotic resume. Just hit us with some of the highlights.
Well, Mark, I came when I was, joined the Army after college and spent over 30 years in the Army, eventually retired as a 3-star general. I fought through basically all of our nation's wars. I fought not only in the Gulf and in Panama, but also in Vietnam, a couple of tours there. What I like to say, one of my greatest accomplishments, I was fortunate enough to command the Army's 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg. I'll still call it Bragg, even though it's now called Liberty. And then after that, went into business for a while, and then I went into politics and joined up with Donald J. Trump and spent 4 years with him after I was his national security advisor right at the start as he started his campaign, and was the chief of staff of the National Security Council for most of the 4 years, and then was also Mike Pence's national security advisor. And then it seemed like every time Donald Trump removed the national security advisor, I was the interim national security advisor. And I'd like to tell everybody that when you added up all the national security advisors President Trump had, be it Mike Flynn or H.R. McMaster or John Bolton or Rod O'Brien, if you put all their time together, I still beat him by 33 days. So I was there quite a while. But it was
and
all
you put
good.
out a statement strongly endorsing Trump. You said, you worked for Trump and you worked for Pence, and there was simply no comparison. And within 48 hours, Mark Short winds up on CNN in what seems to be a softball interview, smearing you. Just listen to your record. Attacking you. And he's on CNN again yesterday, smearing Meadows. What is with this guy? Did he just make a whole bunch of enemies in the Trump White House?
Well, I think he's part of the swamp, if I know the truth. He's kind of a career guy, and I think he really, and a lot of advisors with Mike Pence didn't give him good service, and they caused friction within the White House. And that was my comment. It was about the vice president at the time was, look, when you took on the president of the United States and made some disparaging remarks about the president, to me, you crossed the line. You were the vice president, and everybody kind of held the line there. And we understand there were some friction points, but when that was crossed, I said, okay, I need to let everybody kind of know this is where I stood. And I said it shouldn't have surprised anybody because I've been with Donald J. Trump, Mark, since 2015. I was one of his very first national security guys. It came on when, we were on the 13th floor of Trump Tower, and there was about 40 of us as all, and we worked really hard. You look at pictures when I was on Trump Force One, when we used to fly with him, there's only 2 or 3 of us on the airplane, me or Hope Hicks or Stephen Miller. So I've been with him a long time. So I knew the guy, and I trusted the guy, and I believed in what we did. And I kept saying, everybody, there's a loyalty issue here with me, and you violated the loyalty issue. And I wanted to make sure it was very clear to everybody when I said that.
I also get the impression that they underestimated Trump, his substance, his intelligence, his decision-making, and they really tried to force him to make decisions that he didn't want to make. I think John Bolton was that way, probably General Kelly and Mattis and the others, and I suspect you took it from a different perspective, right? He's the president, and how do we execute?
Yeah, Mark, I tell people, look, when I was with him, he's very Socratic, he meaning Trump in his decision-making. He would come in with a position, and then he'd test the room, and he'd go around the entire room, and everybody kind of had to deliver. And that's the Socratic method, where he asked their opinion, what do you think? And you would have to defend your position very, very well. And he would listen to you, and he would take an advice. For example, let me give you a good one. When moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, there was a waiver on that. Presidents could waive that every 6 months, even though it was in law. And there was like 36 waivers. Well, the president waived it the first time because he listened to his advisors. But he told everybody, you better come back with a good, recommendation because I'm not waiving it again. And he didn't. It was the same thing with the Iran nuclear deal, where he gave everybody a lot of leeway. He gave Rex Tillerson, his Secretary of State, a lot of leeway, and then he finally made a decision on it. But that was the way he made decisions. He had his position. You knew what his position was. You had an opportunity to change his mind. But if you didn't make that case well, then he went with his instincts, which I think were incredible, and he made the decision and he went with it. And a lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people said, once I gave you my recommendation, I kind of expected you to follow it. Well, that's not the way Trump is, and when he made his decisions.
And a lot of these guys I'm just being honest, whether Bill Barr or Rex Tillerson or John Bolton or Mark Short for that matter, they've been around a long place, or they were heads of corporations or whatever, and they really didn't want to be second fiddle, did they?
No. Mark, when I came into the White House, I had to remind everybody from day one, and that happens in the White House. I think maybe it's the water you drink in the place, but everybody got, kind of full of it. I reminded everybody at least once a week, none of us got in a single electoral college vote. Not one of us. Mm-hmm. And we're not elected president. We're here as advisors, and our job is to give him the left limits and the right limits, and if he wants our recommendation, we'll give it to him. But the decision is his, not yours. So don't think you've gotten any electoral college votes or you got any votes from the people. That is the president. And my experience in Washington, D.C. is that's hard for a lot of people to accept. Once they get in those positions, they think they're the primary, and they're really not. They're in a secondary role and an advice role.
I thought Mark Short's biggest smear was he virtually implied that you had something to do with January 6th. Did you see what I'm talking about? And I go, what the hell is this fool doing?
Yeah, that's the reason I fired back pretty hard, because one of the comments he made, that there was the implication on January 6th.
You left your post while he was standing the post.
Yeah, well, and what happened was Robert O'Brien, the National Security Advisor, was down in Miami at Southcom. The Deputy National Security Advisor, Matt Pottinger, did not come in that day. So on January 6th, how it works is you always have a senior National Security Advisor with the President of the United States. And when you move a package, the vehicles, there's a vehicle called, quote, control. That's where the National Security Advisor sits, and it stays with the primary package when it goes anywhere. Okay, that day I was the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. My job was to be with him every step of the way, 2 vehicles behind him in control, behind what they call stagecoach, which was his principal vehicle, and then the shooter's vehicle, and then control. And that's where I was at. And I told Mark that. I said, Mark, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I was with the President of the United States as his National Security Advisor. From the morning he walked in, and then when he walked into the Oval, I was with him. When he went to the ellipse, I was with him. When he came back from the ellipse, I was with him. When he was in the Oval Office in the anteroom, I was with him as well. I stood my post, and I made that very clear to everybody. And anybody who knew what was going on knew that. Everybody in the Secret Service knew it. Mark Meadows knew it.
But that means Mark Short knew it too, but he decided to go on CNN and trash you. One other quick thing, General, before we get to Russia. I'm of two minds with Mark Meadows on what he's doing or what he's done. Still working it through, but he goes on CNN yesterday and says Mark Meadows was a ringleader to overturn the election. No, he wasn't. In fact, what does it mean, ringleader, in trying to overturn the election? Number one, you're allowed to challenge an election to the moment they're done voting on the floor of the House. So in that regard, he's an ignoramus. But Meadows is obviously not able to publicly speak. He's been targeted and so forth. What do you make of taking a shot at somebody who can't even defend themselves?
Yeah, well, he was the chief of staff of the White House. He was on the phone. He was talking with him. He's not a ringleader. He was what he's supposed to be. He was the chief of staff, exactly as the name implies.
We're here with General Keith Kellogg, a great honor, co-chairman of American First Policy Institute. General Kellogg, what happened in Russia today?
Yeah, well, it was pretty brazen, Mark, when you think about it. It was a shoot down by Soviet air defense of Prigozhin's jet. Prigozhin, who was the leader of the Wagner group, just come back from Africa, and was flying from Moscow to St. Petersburg, really his home. And in broad daylight, the Russians put a missile in his aircraft and brought him down. That's the reports that are out there. I'm assuming that they were, he wasn't his second airplane, it was his primary airplane. And he and one of the other members on board was a guy named Dmitry Utrin, which was his number 2. So he basically decapitated the Wagner organization. And this is one of those where Putin, kind of showed his true colors the way he always is. He just cannot stand disloyalty. They nearly pulled off a coup. The Wagner group, with Prigozhin in the lead a couple of months ago, nearly pulled it off. And, I'm reminded of that famous Emerson quote, when you strike at a king, you must kill him. Well, they had a chance to actually pull a coup off. They pulled back from it. They went to Belarus with the Wagner forces, and then Putin just decided it was time to, eliminate Prigozhin. And it's pretty simply power politics. What's going to be interesting to me, Mark, is looking with the Wagner group. I remember what happened when they took over the Russian headquarters, the military headquarters that was fighting in Ukraine in Rostov-on-Don, and how the people of the city of Rostov actually greeted the Wagner group as kind of heroes. It's going to be interesting to see what Putin does now, because he's eliminated somebody from the Wagner group, Prigozhin, who's a real populist and a populist kind of hero. And it'd be interesting to see what happens. And I'm not saying that anything's going to happen to Putin, but there's a lot of people out there. I would tell Putin, you better start looking at your food tasters too, because you're now looking at true power politics. And that's what Putin did. He just eliminated a rival in Prigozhin. But the Wagner group's a very capable military force. They've got good commanders. They're ruthless, primarily former military or GRU. They're military intelligence. There's about 10,000 of them. They happen to be with Lukashenko in Belarus right now, but who knows what's going to happen next. But it's one of those, okay, they drew another line. But it just shows how ruthless Putin can be and how you really can't trust that guy.
Why do you think?
Listen to what he says.
Why do you think he pulled back? I mean, he's almost in the city of Moscow. Putin was on the run.
Yep.
The Russian military was caught completely by surprise. Do you think he just got cold feet?
Yeah, I do, Mark. I had a dog once who used to chase cars. I used to ask the dog when it came back, what were we going to do if you caught the car? And I think they had an opportunity.
That's what liberals tend to do, by the way. But go ahead.
Pardon?
That's what liberals tend to do. They chase cars and so forth.
Well, the forces were moving very hard. The guy who was leading that column towards Moscow was Dmitry Yudkin, who was actually, his call sign was Wagner. That's where the Wagner name came from. But I think what happened is they realized they were actually being pretty successful, and I honestly think they could have pulled it off. I think there was no military forces really facing them. They had one major obstacle to go, and I think they kind of got cold feet or called it off, and they stopped. They shouldn't have stopped. To me, once you go after somebody like a Putin, you better go in for the kill. They didn't do it, and then obviously, Putin with retribution took Prigozhin out of it. And I think, when you look at, I was watching it that day that it was going on, and as fast and as hard as they were moving, if they had gotten inside the Kremlin, there were no forces there. There were National Guard forces in Moscow, and I'm talking about when they talk National Guard in Russia, they're talking about police, super police. That's all it was. But he could have gotten to the Kremlin, and then who knows what would have happened. But I think they got cold feet at the end, and to me, they forgot what Emerson said about going after kings, and didn't do it. But it cost them the brazen shot today, broad daylight, shooting his aircraft down with a Russian missile. That's Putin.
What? Let me ask you this, General. You're co-chairman of America First Policy Institute. Now, you and I know there was an America First movement. Charles Lindbergh and others led it prior to the attack on Pearl Harbor, but right up to the attack on Pearl Harbor. And then Lindbergh changed his mind, but it was a little late. And we were quite isolationist. Churchill had to beg us, trying to figure out ways to get us to support, even though Hitler was already on the move. Dojo, obviously Italy. In the 1950s, we had Robert Taft, the son of Howard Taft. He wasn't so much an isolationist as much as a pacifist, a conservative. And there was a significant wing of the Republican Party that went that way as well. And I feel like we have some of that going on today. If you don't recognize that Putin's old KGB, that he's a monster, he's a mass murderer, and that he invaded Ukraine and that he has intentions beyond Ukraine, and then you blame America first. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. Is that your idea of America First policy?
No, not at all. What the America First, and you know this from history, was back in the late 30s and start of the 40s, was an isolationist movement. Mm-hmm. That's not America First. America First Policy Institute, America First. It's all about, first, the we the people. As the Constitution in the preamble says, it's all about ensuring that the United States is protected first. And I've been to Ukraine, and our position is pretty clear. Like when we worked at AFBI, was, look, we're just saying we understand the Ukrainians are fighting their hearts out, but we haven't supported them the way we should support them. aircraft or long-range missiles. Even the Abrams tank hasn't shown up in the battlefield yet. But at the same time, we owe it to the American people to explain to them why Ukraine's in our vital national interest, what our job is there, what we intend to do. And my take always with Ukraine isn't Ukraine. It could be Moldova as far as I'm concerned. My job is you're taking a strategic adversary, Russia, off the stage. And why that's important, because then it allows you to pivot to the Pacific. You know, when you look at the national security strategy of Biden, they talk about Russia as a threat. Got it. That's where we need to take them off the stage. But they call China a competitor. No, France is a competitor. China is an adversary as well. And we need to be able to pivot from Europe or even the Middle East into facing China as an emergent threat into the future. But for somebody that I think we make a huge mistake, Mark, when we start pulling back and trying to basically become an isolationist moving away from Ukraine. But I think there's some things we do, and it's nuance. I think there's some things that need to be explained to the American people. What's our end state? What's the goal? How do we intend to get there? And how do we support our, the alliance as long as it supports American interests first? Let me just give you a quick aside. Every time a foreign leader would come into the cabinet room and talk to President Trump, the first thing out of President Trump's mouth was always, "What's our trade balance with you?" And the point he was trying to make is always about Americans first, and we must address America first, the people first, and then once we address our needs, then we go on and help everybody else. But it's not isolationism. It's not moving away from the world. It's moving the world and molding the world so it supports America first and our people first.
Now, a couple of things in response to that, too. Look at what Biden is doing. Look what he's done in Afghanistan, the way he withdrew. Look what he's doing in Ukraine. Too little, maybe too late. Now look in the Middle East, what he's doing to the state of Israel, confronting Iran, which is now selling oil willy-nilly to the communist Chinese. They had 4,000 of our naval personnel surrounded the other day with drones just flying all over the place. There's speedboats surrounding our destroyer, as I understand it. And we're giving them $6 billion via South Korea. People are talking about $3.8 billion that Israel gets. We need Israel's alliance. We need Israel to help us in that part of the world, don't we?
Oh, sure we do. And my concern is we've kind of, turned the blind eye towards Iran. And I'm shocked what's happened, and that's where Biden's walked away from it, is, Iran and Saudi Arabia put together a deal, talking to each other. It was put together by the Chinese, not by the United States. And I think within a year and a half, what concerns me is you're going to see a nuclear breakout by Iran. And we're not going to be able to do it. Well, we can do something. We just won't do anything about it. But let me just give you an example of the national security strategy.
But hold on one second. Israel's not going to tolerate that, so Israel's going to go to war. Are they going to have our backing?
Well, they would have if Trump was in the White House.
Yes, but what about this guy?
With Biden. And it's that way because I think you're looking at an administration that's risk-averse. Look, everything they have done has been risk-averse. They never address the issue that's facing them. I don't care if it's immigration. I don't care if it's Ukraine. I don't care if it's China. They just kind of walk away, and hopefully that the American people won't pay any attention to it. Look, in the last 3 years, we've evacuated 5 U.S. embassies, in other words, because of the threat that we face. In the Trump administration, we evacuated none, 0. And I think they just look at any type of adversity as an ability to walk away and just kind of say, well, the American people won't care. Let's just not talk about it. And my concern in the Middle East is going to come up where you see a nuclear Iran. Then what do? You're going to see an expansion of North Korea in a nuclear field as well. You just look at what's happened with Russia, and the emergence of China as well.
Let me just say this, General, and I'm going to want to bring it back just because I have to go. I don't think you're going to see a nuclear Iran. I think you're going to see a war. Because there's no way the Israelis are going to be able to put up with that, because they keep threatening to use nukes against them. And if you're the prime minister of Israel, that means you got to do whatever the hell you can to make sure they never get nukes. Because the distance between Iran and Israel. You know how tiny that country is. They can't afford even a blinking mistake. All right, General.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I apologize. I do have to go. I want to thank you. You're always welcome here. You're great patriot and also very sensible. So you take care of yourself.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
All right. You be well, General. He's a great guy.